Morning, everyone. Welcome to Tabs on Tap. I am Tabitha Hassell. Happy to have you all join me this morning. Gosh, happy August, right? Can you believe it's already August 1st? It's like, where did the time go? Where did the summer go? I love the months of August and September. I actually like the really hot, steamy weather, believe it or not. And I don't feel like we really had despite the climate change, global warming, it really has not been that hot of a summer. I mean, we've had a couple of hot days, but nothing too crazy. And we'll probably be talking about the weather a lot on my podcast because I think we all know these days that just about any crazy weather phenomenon, some of the strange clouds we see, some of these strange storms, all geoengineering. Conversation for another day. Good morning, Ryan. Again, I'm Tabitha with Tabs on Tap. This is episode number 10. Can you believe it? 10 episodes in. It took me a year to finally get going after leaving Cancel This, but here we are. I am hosting and producing. I'm doing it all. And it's definitely been trial and error. And I always want to thank all of you for sticking in there, hanging in there with me, and especially for the support. I have received so many amazing messages from people, and I cannot tell you, I there's no way in a million years I could host and produce a podcast without all of the support I've received because it has been challenging to say the least. Good morning, Kim and Roberta. And some housekeeping notes. I just want to remind everyone, I'll probably do this for the first few episodes because I know there's still a lot of new people joining in, on the podcast. And my podcast is going to be very informal. I'm not a journalist. I've never had any official broadcast training. I've been on, numerous shows, and some of you have been with me since 2012, 2013, and I appreciate that more than you guys know. But I want things to be relaxed. This show is about all of us. It's not just me and my opinions. It's about what all of you think. And for any of you that comment, you'll know that when I see the comments pop up, I will read them. So if you have anything to say, that's the place to say it. You can always email me. I'm going to have, as the show evolves, things are going to change. There's going to be more going on. I have some really, really good news today. And that good news is Colonel Joe Adams. I had an opportunity to reach out to him this weekend. He got back to me early this morning. And boy, I love Colonel Joe Adams. I just love the guy. And on this show, we speak the truth. There are no topics that are off limit. Nothing is off limit. We're going to talk about everything from politics to news to life after death to paranormal to just anything, literally anything, health, wellness. We're going to talk about all of it. And that Colonel Joe Adams, that man has some truth. He has seen some things, he's still in the know. There's a lot of things he can talk to us about, particularly about what's going on over in the Middle East. I will be looking forward to talking to him. He and I are going to work out a time. Hopefully, he'll join us every week. We have Joe Fresta, who I believe is going to be joining us tomorrow if all goes well. And Joe and I, it's going to be kind of a fun segment. I think you should stick around for it because if you guys don't know Joe Fresta, he's of the Pasta House family. He does the Facebook Food Critic. He's been on 590 talking about sports. He's been a personal friend of mine for a really long time and does a lot of work, cancer survivor, does a lot of work in the community as far as raising funds for cancer. It's going to be exciting to have him on because we're going to be talking about dating. Doesn't seem like it would match with my podcast, but years ago when I was on 1380, I would have a little segment talking about relationships and dating. And for those who don't know, way back in the day, I was a hypnotherapist. And a lot of the people that came in to me to see me for that were people who had relationship problems. I did a lot of relationship counseling and different things like that. And until I had a crazy stalker, then I had to switch professions very quickly. But back in the day, it was a lot of fun. And we're going to kind of rehash some of that. Joe and I are going to talk about dating, what it's like to be dating in 2024. He and I are both single. So we have a lot to talk about. We're both, I'm not out there as much as I was, but he and I have both been definitely out there. Good morning, Dottie. Good morning, Sherry and Adrian. But anyway, I'm going to add some really fun segments as the show continues on. It's not always going to be just news and politics, but right now there's so much going on. Obviously, we have the election coming up. And that's part of the reason why I jumped into the podcast now, even though I wasn't 100% ready, because we have to. There's so much to talk about. There's so much to talk about. And hopefully we're going to get to a lot of different issues today. There's a lot I want to talk about today. One being Facebook censorship. They delete so many of my shows. I don't even have a problem saying anymore. Hopefully they won't ban me. But you can catch this show live Monday through Friday, Central Standard Time at from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. Monday through Thursday. On Fridays, I'm going to be on from 7 a.m. until 10 a.m. So an extra hour. Joe Fressa will be joining me around 9:30-ish to talk about the dating game, that segment. We're going to work out some times for Joe Adams. We have a lot of other guests joining us as I continue to evolve into segments and different topics and that type of thing. But usually I come on at 7:05 a.m. That is because I'm a procrastinator, as I will say many times. And I know if I tell myself I'm going to start at 7 a.m., I will be late. So I might as well schedule myself a little bit late to make sure I have everything in order. And I wasn't in yesterday, so yesterday there was no show. Being that this today's only the 10th episode, I don't have enough shows for a replay. So we're eventually maybe we'll do best of replays. Maybe some guest hosts. I would really love if some people want to jump in and be a guest host for a day. But just to warn you, if you do, or if anybody other does, it's a lot of work. So that will be a work in progress. But as some of you know, I own a security company. Most of my work is in the evenings, but there are times in the mornings when I have absolutely no choice but to do it myself. So hopefully that won't happen too often. I do have some other folks that can fill in for me. Like today, I didn't want to miss 2 days in a row. Today, so much to talk about. Again, Facebook censorship. I want to talk about nurse practitioners. I'll relay a personal situation that happened to me recently. I'm sure all of us have been to our doctor's office, emergency rooms, made maybe an appointment with a nurse practitioner separately from a doctor. Fastest growing, profession in the United States. I want to talk about that. How reliable is a nurse practitioner? The FBI released a report on trafficking. So I got some statistics here for you, not to mention the arrest that took place at Comic Con recently. No surprise, every big event has sex trafficking around it, which is crazy to think about. We're going to talk about the latest with the Harrison campaign, Trump campaign, polling, voting. There's already some voting discrepancies taking place. We're going to get into that. So many different things. I still have some updates on the shooter situation, and for the shooter situation, attempted assassination of Donald Trump. There's a video I'm going to play for you here in a little while. And you can see Trump on the stage. I'm not sure if any of you have seen this video. You can see Trump on the stage, and you can also see the shooter on the building, on the roof, behind him while he's speaking. That's how obvious this guy was. You can see him. It's crazy. How is that even possible? With all the stuff that's going on in the Middle East, I definitely want to talk about terrorism. I'm not sure if any of you guys were around back when I was on 1380, but one of the things that I talked about a lot at that time was terrorism and global politics, world politics, something I'm very familiar with, and trying to decipher it all and what's going on over there. Most of what you see on television is propaganda. Most of it is propaganda. And when we really start getting into foreign politics, we all have to really read between the lines. You have to do some research. You have to do some research. The people who we are told are our enemies are not really all of our enemies. The people we are told are our allies are not necessarily our allies. They might be the allies of the deep state, not necessarily what's best for us, the American people. And Adrian said, "Did you see the video of the figure on top of the water tower?" I did. I wish I could have seen a better video. I saw what probably you guys saw. There was definitely someone up there. There's no question about it. You can see someone move to the front of the water tower and then move back. They move to the front, you hear the shots fired, and then they step back. Now, you can't really see anything unless you guys have seen a better video than I have. If you have, send it to me. But what I saw was a shadowy figure step forward and step back. They don't appear to be in a shooting stance. That doesn't mean they weren't shooting. They don't appear to be in a shooting stance. The bullet trajectory for the one we see fly past Trump, which, by the way, the FBI finally did admit that absolutely was a bullet, not glass, not shrapnel. It was a bullet that grazed Trump's ear. And I don't know what was going on the water tower. I who was up there? You know, the Secret Service, they haven't admitted to having anyone up there. And if it was someone from the Secret Service or local law enforcement, surely they would have seen this guy on the roof. But I'll tell you what, right now, I don't even know who was on the roof. I really don't. You know, nothing surprises me these days. And we'll be breaking this down as we go on. But the more I hear about Maxwell Urick, the more I really wonder who was actually on the roof that day. Why was Maxwell Urick there? He has been tied to the van, the white van with the GMC van with the IEDs inside. He's been photographed and allegedly videotaped there. We know it was his van that was there with the Arizona license plates. What was he doing there? I really would like to know. And I wasn't going to talk to this about this yet, but Adrian, since you mentioned it, good morning, Dottie and Sherry. I'm going to go into playing this video now, so you'll see where the shooter was. I have played the video in the past of the person, the shadowy figure up on the tower. You can go back and look at that. If you guys would like, I can play it again. Let's see here. You know me and my video clips. It better be here somewhere. Here it is, right here. If you have to really watch closely, you'll see Donald Trump speaking, and if you look directly above him, you'll see somebody in the video has circled where the shooter is located. You can clearly see someone up there moving around. Now, someone in the crowd, they may have thought, oh, well, that's Secret Service. That's nothing. We don't need to worry about that. So whether or not anybody noticed it, I don't know. But now that you see the video, how could they miss it?
Great gentleman. So we're going to bring him up for can we bring him up for a couple of minutes? All right, you get ready, McCormick. You get ready. I'll get you up here. The world will see a vibrant Republican Party.
How obvious was that? How obvious was that? I understand why people in the audience didn't see it. I understand why Trump didn't see it. Why didn't Secret Service see it? Why didn't any of the other law enforcement officers see it? You know, I don't know. I don't understand. I have as many questions as anyone else does, probably more. And then we learned that I don't know if you guys saw last week or this week, earlier this week, where there were some photos leaked of screenshots between, Secret Service officers. They were talking about, oh, did you see that guy over there with the rangefinder? Yeah, I saw him. Well, here he is. I took some photos of him. This is the guy. Was the biggest question I have was Crooks there with Maxwell Urick? They know each other, according to some sources. Again, you're not going to see this on mainstream news. There's no way. They're not going to talk about Maxwell Urick. Nobody even knows who he is. But I'm going to talk about it. I'll probably get deleted, banned, or who knows what else. Look up the name Maxwell Urick. And on my Telegram page, I actually posted a photo of Maxwell Urick next to Thomas Crooks. And if you go on, they look a lot alike. I mean, had they, been shot, it would be difficult to tell them apart. And as a matter of fact, I think that the person who was shot looks more like Maxwell Urick than it does Crooks. And I think that's really interesting once you know the details of what really took place that day. So, who is Maxwell Urick? He owns an explosives company in Arizona. Again, his van, allegedly, GMC van, being towed away from the rally that day. Some people, very watchful people, had photos of the license plate, of course, and they were able to trace that back to Urick. They went out to his home, and an independent journalist went out to his home and spoke to a family member who, of course, denied everything, as you would expect. I'm sure she wasn't expecting that to happen, and I'm sure his family doesn't have. But where is he? Nobody knows where he is. He's gone. There's a lot of reports that he was arrested that day. There's a lot of talk that he was actually the real shooter. I mean, maybe they were both shooters. I don't know that we'll ever know because they're not going to tell us. And Sherry says, no way did the Secret Service miss this. They delayed and allowed. It does make you wonder. Kim says, wow, very obvious. It is extremely obvious. How did they miss it? Because isn't that what they're supposed to be watching for, is people up on the roof? The only thing I can think of is that, again, we learned earlier this week that, and I played the video, that the SWAT team, the local SWAT team, was supposed to meet with the Secret Service prior to the rally. And then that meeting was canceled. And when that meeting was canceled, they had no knowledge of what the plan the Secret Service had. Now, wouldn't you think that would be number one? Because I know when I work security for an event, and trust me, I have worked some very high level security for A-list celebrities, movie premieres. And what you do is you have a meeting beforehand, sometimes several meetings beforehand. I send out messages, emails, making sure everybody's on the same page. And that's step number one, outside of securing the perimeter and everything else, is that anyone involved has a meeting and you let everyone know their individual responsibilities. And you let each person know everyone else's responsibilities. So that way, every base is covered. Everyone knows what their role is. Everyone knows what the other person's role is. Everyone knows this person's covering this door, this person's covering, in my case, the red carpet, or this person's covering the parking lot. Everything has to be detailed. Detailed. You draw it out. In my case, draw it out on a map, and you know where every person is and what every person is doing. And this is the Secret Service, for gosh sakes. I'm just some person in Missouri, Illinois, but come on now. You can't tell me they didn't know better or they didn't plan better. And there should be a lot of people losing their jobs, quite honestly. Robert, all the talk in Michigan is Kamala said she will be in Detroit this weekend with her VP pick. Pundits here are speculating it will be Governor Whitmer of Michigan. It could be. I haven't heard her throw her name in the ring, but it could be. I've been speculating that it's probably Josh Shapiro, but Whitmer, it could be Whitmer. It would not surprise me at all. However, they play identity politics. We'll get into that later. But back to the shooting situation. Look up Maxwell Urick. Yearick, I believe is the spelling. And again, on my Telegram channel under Tabs on Tap, I have some information there that I cannot post here or talk about here, or I will get bleeped out like I was the other day. But it is pretty interesting that these two were there together. They have been tied to the same gun range. Allegedly, they were at the same gun range either earlier that day or the day prior. I haven't quite figured out which one is true. Good morning, Joe Adams and the Washington Guard. So glad to see you on our comment line. Good morning, Joe, the other Joe. And does anything surprise you when it comes to an attempted assassination or what would have been an assassination? Nothing surprises me. I mean, obviously, the first thing that always comes to mind is Reagan and Kennedy. And would it surprise you if there's a patsy? Was Crooks even the shooter at all? Maybe it was Urick. I mean, Urick clearly had a lot more experience. Maybe they acted together. Maybe maybe Crooks was the shooter and Urick had the IEDs. I don't know what the bigger plan was. But what I do want to know is, where is Urick now? Are the police looking for him? No one's mentioned looking for him. Where is he? What role does he play? Why isn't anyone talking about him? Why do you not hear the name Maxwell Urick all across mainstream media? I mean, we know why. But I would like to know why. I would like to know why no one is talking about him. It's so strange to me. Good morning, Dee and Paula. And Robert says, I am expecting another attempt on Trump. Well, of course, because, plan what B? Was that plan B? Plan A was putting him in jail. That didn't work. Well, technically, plan B is bankrupting him, which is happening. And we're going to get into Trump's finances at some point today, along with the judgments against him. And plan C, of course, was to take him out. We all saw all of these things coming. Don't tell me you didn't see it. That doesn't mean you have a violent mind, but we all know how they operate. And what's the next plan? What's DEFG? Because there is one. There is one. So I would not surprise me at all. Brenda says, how did you hear about him? If you're talking about Uric, I'm on a lot of back channels. There's a lot of folks that I talk to, and a lot of times that's why I have the news long before anyone else. Some of the things it's kind of funny. I didn't watch, but somebody sent me an episode of Jesse Waters' show, and he was covering some of the things we talked about days ago, just this week. And so there are back channels where you hear the news, and that's why sometimes I always say, allegedly, I can't confirm this. I don't talk about it if I don't believe it to be true, or at least have some credibility. But I don't have a way to go out and always be on the ground to confirm these things. And what happens is that your news channels like Fox National or whoever you may watch, even Newsmax or America Online, they have an investigative process where when they hear something on the same back channels that I do, they have a longer process and a lot more people involved to go out and work out the details, check out the validity and so on. Whereas it's me, I see the information and I come straight to you with it. And I will always say, hey, take this with a grain of salt. I can't confirm it. I will let you know up front. But a lot of this, I'll get the information from the same places. I'm just able to talk about it a little bit faster because I'm doing my own research. But either way, there's so much information out there, and I will always promise to bring it to you guys probably long before you're going to hear it on mainstream news, if you ever hear it on mainstream news, if ever. Robert says, suspend voting due to civil unrest of war, remove Biden, 25th Kamala president, Marxist for, she is beyond a Marxist. And Robert, I don't know if you were here with us the other day, but I was talking about exactly that. I'm going to talk a little bit more later about Harris. And she is the most social. She is a socialist, the most socialist, most far right candidate we've ever seen in the United States. And it's unfortunate that so many areas in the United States are becoming more and more progressive, more into socialism and Marxism, that it's not really that strange that someone is socialist, as Marxist as she is, has finally made their way to the top. We thought Joe Biden was bad. What they did with Joe Biden was nothing compared to what they're going to do with us, with Harris. You just wait and see. I think most of you already know that. And it's already happening. It's already happening. Already happening. There's already issues with mail-in voting. Have you heard that? And it's kind of funny. Here's a funny. I saved this video here because it's kind of a little funny joke about mail-in voting. And Paula says she believes Kamala is a communist. I believe it too. I absolutely believe it. Can I show you her communist commie certificate? No, but I do absolutely believe she is a communist and will bring in communism into our country, even bigger than what it was. On Tuesday, I showed you guys a video in Pennsylvania about the new Communist Party of America. And I'll tell you what, 500 folks Americans out marching with this I think they call them the Revolutionary Communists of America Party. It's new. I don't know if it's separate from RevCom, part of RevCom, same with LPL. I don't know if these are all part of the same groups or totally separate groups. I believe they're separate groups. I believe there are many thousands of people in our country who are communists, and they know now is their time. They know it's their time, and it is. Oh, where's our son?
October, you think? Yeah, we got an election year, so I'm expecting COVID to come back. When about October, you think? But that's okay. They're ready this time. They're ready, because when the election hits in November, they're just going to have DoorDash pick up your vote. They'll take it in. Oh, it'll be in a lockbox. It'll be secure.
Is it really that funny? It is funny, but how close is that to being the truth? How close is that to being the truth? Robert says, Cami, when in Congress, I said Cami, he says Kamala. Kamala, when in Congress, voted along with Bernie Sanders on everything who identifies himself as a communist. No question about it. I mean, she according to Ben Carson, I played the video from Ben Carson on Tuesday. If you guys didn't watch Tuesday's show, Facebook deleted it, but you can still see it out on X. You can still see it on Telegram, and believe it or not, still on YouTube. And Ben Carson, I played a video. He said that Harris is farther to the left than Bernie Sanders, which is crazy, super crazy. But guess what? The Democrat Party, whether they believe it or not, they are being taken over by socialists. The people we know who are Democrats, the vast majority are not socialists. They are not. I don't even think they realize what they're getting themselves into. They will soon find out. But we're already seeing issues with mail-in voting already. And I don't know if you guys saw this story. Lebanon County, Pennsylvania. People are filling out applications for mail-in voting. Why, as a Republican, would you fill out an application for in-person voting unless you're elderly, ill? If for some reason you can't get to a polling center, definitely mail in your vote. Whatever you have to do to get your vote in, even if we don't trust the system. But if you are able-bodied, it is your right in this country, your constitutional right, to be able to take off work and go and cast your vote. And you have to do it. Don't do a mail-in vote. Do not do it. And and when you go, take your own pen. Take your own pen. I can't tell you in how many elections people would message me and say, well, they gave me a Sharpie, and don't use their Sharpie. And I'm not saying that a Sharpie won't work. It's very contested. Some people say, oh, a Sharpie does work. Some people say Sharpie doesn't work. You don't have to worry about any of that. Take your own pen. Make sure it's a black pen. Take your own pen. Do your own marking. Do what you have to do. And yes, Joe, it is. It is your duty to get out and vote. Sherry says people don't realize we are a constitutional republic. They don't. Robert, sexist, mail-in voting. And I love Jeff Allen too. He's hilarious. Mail-in voting already seeing problems. And this is just one of many. Please don't do mail-in voting. Lebanon County, Pennsylvania. Republicans in that county who were wishing to have their mail-in vote had to fill out an application, and so that they could mail in a vote. Well, their application, in this application, and this was supplied by some type of super PAC, political action committee there in Lebanon County, Pennsylvania. Well, when they received their application in the mail, there was a third-party mailer in there. And so what you do is you take your application, you fill it out, you put it back in this third-party mailer, and you send it back in. And then you are officially registered for mail-in voting. Well, what happened is that on this third-party mailer, there were two addresses. One address on one side, one address on the other side. Why? Who knows? Was it a misprint? Was it intentional? I don't know. I don't think anyone knows at this point. However, what happened is some of these people who mailed in their application, depending on how the post office scanned it, it would either be returned back to them, or it went on, through to its final destination and registered them for their mail-in vote. So for a lot of these people, they had an application deadline. They filled out their application to vote as a Republican. This didn't happen, to anyone else because it was part of this Republican political action committee. And so a lot of these people missed the deadline because by the time they sent it in and it came back to their own home address, what a mess. We're going to see so many things going on, so many things. Sherry says, also, if the poll worker is marking your ballot at all, anywhere, ask for a new ballot. That is good advice, Sherry. Treat your ballot like you would your money. If you had $100 bill in your hand, wouldn't you hold on to that pretty tight? Wouldn't you be very careful with that? Do the same thing, or a check, whatever. Hold on to your ballot. Take your own pen with you. Fill it out diligently. Be very cautious. Don't give them any excuses. Fill it out. And make sure you cast your vote. Don't even play any games about not showing your ID or any of that other stuff. We all like to challenge the rules. Don't do that. Go in, every person, cast your vote, make sure your vote. Make sure your vote's in there. I will be the first to tell you, voting is an illusion. Our elections are an illusion. It is all an illusion of choice, an illusion of freedom. There is no freedom in this country, very little freedom, all an illusion. But you know what? Either way, we still have to go in and cast our vote because then we can come back and say, we did vote. We were the majority and we did vote for Donald Trump. We did. So that's something to think about. Jay, Illinois was or is mailing everyone a mail in ballot, requested or not. Of course they are. Let's see, Joe. Let's see here. That's JB Pritzker. He's a huge swamp rat. No doubt about it. No doubt about it. But yes, Jay, you have to vote, period. Day of voting is costing Republicans wins because they aren't going to vote among Republicans. The turnout among Republicans hasn't been good. It hasn't been. People are not voting. Whenever I used to go over the election results and, you know, St. Louis City, what was there, less around 12% of people in the city voted? I mean, come on. How can you complain? How can you be upset if you don't go out and at least try? And I get it. I'm the first person to say it is totally pointless to cast a vote because it does not count. It doesn't matter. You still have to try. You have to try. If there's anything, we can at least maybe have some recourse if we at least try. So think about that and do not do, unless you're unable to leave your house or in another country or something else is going on where you cannot in person vote, please, as a Republican, do not mail in your vote. Do not mail in your vote. We all saw what happened the last time with mail in voting. Do not do it. But you know what? What if you have no choice? You know, the situation in the Middle East is heating up very quickly. It's escalating very quickly. Is that with intent? I don't know. You know, Anthony Blinken claims that I'm going to play a little video by him that we don't have anything to do with any of this. I don't believe that. You know, we're always right in the middle of everything, aren't we? Always right in the middle of every situation that goes on everywhere. We are the world's police and the biggest instigator in unrest all across the world. No question about it. There's a lot going on in the Middle East. There's a lot going on. You know, Americans were warned yesterday, if you're in Lebanon, shelter in place. It's too late to leave. Just about every country had already warned people in Lebanon, if you're in Lebanon, leave. Leave immediately. A lot of people, of course, they didn't leave. That's where their home is. That's where their family is. And there's not everything they can do to leave. So now they're being told shelter in place. We know about the airstrike into Beirut and, of course, by Israel. And anytime a country attacks another country, whether it's in retaliation or anything else, it causes problems. And it does cause a lot of problems. I know Jay says, pay attention to Venezuela now as well as the Middle East. Yeah, Jay, I spent a lot of time talking and showing videos on Venezuela on Tuesday because we're just a couple steps behind Venezuela. What happened to them once they went socialist? Again, like I said on Tuesday, they started burning their cash to stay warm. Wealthy people reduced to eating out of trash cans. People starving to death. Have to watch it. So as you guys recall, we talked about this a few episodes ago. Hezbollah attacked Israel and in the Golan Heights area. I believe it was 12 children playing soccer were killed in retaliation. And you know, I say in retaliation, they both retaliate back and forth so much that the original strike happened so far back, none of us would even remember when it was. So they retaliate back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Never ends. And in the fighting you'll hear about along the border of Israel and Lebanon, that has been going on for a very long time. That is not new. It has been going on for a very long time. And but the strike going into Lebanon, into Beirut, that killed the Hezbollah leader Fuad Shakur. I'm notoriously bad at pronouncing names, but I believe that is correct. He had a $5 million bounty placed on him by the United States. He was considered a specially designated global terrorist. He was in Beirut, Israel again, fired a strike over into Lebanon, killed the Hezbollah leader. Now, Hezbollah, they are Shiites. Do you know what a Shiite, the difference between Sunni and Shiite is? If you don't, definitely do your research on that. I'll try to fill you in as good as I can. It's something, again, I've been talking about for many years, the difference between the two. And it's important to know the difference between the two. So before we go too far, I want to talk a lot about terrorism. Terrorism is subjective. I mean, the Oath Keepers have been designated a terror organization, haven't they? Are the Oath Keepers terrorists? I don't think so. Each government can declare any group of people a terrorist. Do you consider ISIS a terrorist? Do you consider the what are they called? The Party of Islam a terrorist? There's so many different organizations. Al Qaeda, are they terrorists? I think they are. They go around and kill innocent people. They invade towns, and you either follow them and adapt to their policies, or they kill you in very horrific ways. Definitely a terrorist. Now, we have a lot of countries who wage war back and forth. Is Hezbollah a terrorist organization? Is Hamas a terrorist organization? A lot of people consider the United States and our military a terrorist organization. It's very subjective because, and the reason when I'm not taking any sides on any people, but I will tell you that any group of people that has been oppressed for a very long period of time, I don't care who they are, any group of people that has been oppressed over a long period of time, those people are going to rise up, they're going to build an army, and they are going to fight back. Look at Yemen and the Houthis. I may lose some followers over this. I don't consider the Houthis to be a terror organization. I consider them to be people who lived in Yemen who were so tired of being oppressed by the United States and Saudi Arabia and some other countries. 250 million Yemenis died. 250 million, sorry, 250,000 Yemenis died at the hands of mostly the United States and Saudi Arabia in our airstrikes. Many millions more starved to death, literally millions starving. And the country is in a complete upheaval. Now, if you lived there, if that was you and you were oppressed in that way, wouldn't you put together a group and wouldn't you lash out at the people oppressing you? I'm not saying who's right and who's wrong, but that's how we come to terrorists. People feel like they are oppressed. Some of them are, some of them not so much, and they form their own army. And then guess what? Some countries declare them a terror organization. To their own people, they're not terrorists. To their own people, they are their protectors. So it really depends on what side you are on. When it comes to Islamic terrorism, the FBI did a report. This was a few years ago. The report still stands true today. When they looked at Islamic terrorism, 99% of the terror groups were Sunni. And Sunni would be, let's say, Iraq or let me think, Syria. There's a lot of Sunnis in Syria. All throughout the Middle East, Muslims are pretty much divided between Sunni and Shiites. 99% of all terror groups are Sunni. Now, that doesn't mean that all Sunni people are terrorists by any means. That's not the case at all. Just like any other group, anything in life, the majority are good people, but the extremists on the Sunni side are the people that rise up as Al Qaeda. They are Sunni. We have the Army of Islam, Sunni. ISIS, Sunni. And let me think, are there any others? Al Qaeda, ISIS, all these folks are Sunni. The Shiites, on the other hand, are, let's say, Assad. Assad is technically a Shiite. He's an Alawite, which is Robert says Sunni is Saudis. Yes, Saudis are Sunni. And Hezbollah's Shiites. Lebanon. Let's talk about Lebanon for a second. Lebanon is made up, their demographics, 95% Muslim and Christian combined. Believe it or not, in Lebanon, they haven't had a census since 1932 because politics in Lebanon have been so heated and so divisive that they stopped doing a census. So 95% of those people, the other 5% are made up of other religions. All we know about Lebanon is that 95% is a combination of Muslim and Christian. And most people say it's fairly mixed. So in Lebanon, 50% are Arab, 22% Syrian, 10% Palestinian. Now, most Palestinians are also Shiites. And so think about that. The United States has always sided with the Sunni, always. And Robert, I know you know this. Robert Peterborough, I know you know this. We've always sided with the Sunni. And as you know, under Obama, he had, as a matter of fact, one of the largest failed operations, CIA operations ever in our history. I think it was $500 billion, $500 billion. While we were over in Syria, we being the United States, and we're over in Syria under Obama saying that we are fighting ISIS. We weren't. That wasn't what we were doing. Now it's documented. Project, I think it was called Sycamore, Timber Sycamore, Sycamore Timber, one or the other. And under that program, under the CIA, what we were actually doing is we were actually training what Obama termed as moderate terrorists. There's such thing as moderate terrorists. We were training moderate terrorists to actually oust Assad, who is not Sunni. We, the United States, we wanted the Sunni to take over in Syria. We wanted ISIS, the Army of Islam, all of these people who murdered our United States troops, murdered actually people I know, friends of people I know. It's such a convoluted world we live in, and I don't expect anyone to necessarily keep track of this. But Obama wanted to oust Assad, Bashar Assad, who is, of course, was and is still the president of Syria. And he went in and sent our troops over there, many of whom lost their lives, saying that we were fighting ISIS when the entire time we were actually helping ISIS because we wanted ISIS, the Sunnis, to take over in Syria. We did it in Libya. We've done it in Egypt. We've done this in so many different countries. And so when I hear about these airstrikes going on between Israel and Lebanon, between Israel and Iran, and trust me, Iran is Persians and mostly also Shiites in Iran. I know that our country supports the real terrorists, and that would be the Sunnis, such as ISIS, Al Qaeda, and so on. I don't trust anything they tell us. Always look at the back channels. Don't trust anything they tell us. I am 100% behind Israel in that they have every right to defend themselves. I think every country has every right to defend themselves, don't they? We certainly do. Every country has the right to defend themselves. And I understand that Israel is a tiny, tiny little speck. And I believe they fought and they won their country legitimately. They absolutely have every right to be happy, peaceful, prosperous, and protect themselves. But we absolutely have to start looking. We have to start looking about what's really going on in the world. Where is this all really going? Why do we, the United States and Israel and a lot of other countries, Europe, why do we always support the Sunni when the Sunni is our enemy? Shouldn't they? They're not really our enemy, but they should be our enemy. They want to murder us Americans. They hate us. On the other hand, the Shiite, you know how many terror groups there are? Shiite terror groups, designated Shiite terror groups. There were none until they designated Hezbollah as a terror group and Hamas as a terror group. And here's what's so crazy is that Obama and several folks before him and Biden, they all supported Hamas. They funded Hamas with millions of dollars, millions of dollars. Trump ended that program. It's one of the first things he did. I've talked about that before on the show. He ended that program. We have to look at the writing on the wall. Robert says, Obama's handlers. The chief of staff, yes, Valerie Jarrett is an Iranian whose family has major influence in Chicago. Paula, moderate terrorist. That sounds like something Obama and the CIA would come up with. Well, that they actually did come up with that, Paula. You can look and find videos. I've played it before where Obama actually does explain Project Timber Sycamore because he had to go back and explain it, and he called them moderate terrorists. Well, what happens in terrorism, and this goes across all fields of terrorism, whether it's Hezbollah or ISIS or anyone else, killing their leader, it doesn't make any difference because as soon as you kill their leader, there's somebody waiting in the wings to step up, and typically the person who steps up is a lot worse than that person. Now, in this case, Israel also launched a strike. This is a really big deal into Tehran. And when he did, he killed the leader of Hamas. Now, his name is Dr. Ismail Haniyeh. He's a doctor, Ismail Haniyeh. I'm not saying he's a good person by any means. I don't support any type of terrorism. I don't care who is committing it. You do not kill innocent women and children. I wish with everything I have in my being that we had peace in the Middle East. It's never going to happen. And it's certainly not going to happen right now. So, Dr. Ismail Haniyeh, he was the leader of Hamas. Now, there have been several leaders before him. And from what I understand, he rose up in the ranks very quickly because the Hamas leaders are taken out pretty often. It's not really that unusual. So, Secretary of State Blinken, he wants to completely stay out of this because I don't care what you say. You may not like what I have to say, and you can tell me I'm wrong, and that's okay. I will still like you if you tell me I'm wrong. But I can assure you, I have studied foreign politics for many, many, many years, and it doesn't make me right, but I at least do have my opinion. And that is Iran is actually a very dangerous country. Their government is very dangerous. I think of Iran like little barking dogs. They will bark, 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 bark. And their defense is to be a deterrent. We're going to bomb you. We're going to do this. We're going to do that and hope that you back down. But once you've crossed that line, they are formidable. And they do actually have a lot of military power, whether our government wants to tell us that or not. They actually do. And I think the United States, I think we're scared of Iran. I think Anthony Blinken is scared of Iran, of course, our Secretary of State. And there is no doubt in my mind that we are right in the middle of everything that happened. I don't think Israel would strike Beirut. I don't think they would strike Tehran without our maybe assistance. For sure, our approval, maybe our assistance. And these other countries, they all know. I mean, our government can say whatever they want, whatever they want. But these people, they all know the role we play. And that's why we as Americans are hated in so many different countries. So I'm going to show you. I'm going to find this video of our Secretary of State Anthony Blinken talking because he, of course, is backpedaling. He does not want anyone to know that we, the United States, were any part of these strikes. And guess what? I can guarantee you we're right in the middle of it.
Haniyeh was involved in ceasefire talks in Gaza. What impact is his death going to have?
Well, of course, I've seen the reports, and what I can tell you is this. First, this is something we were not aware of or involved in. It's very hard to speculate, and I've learned over many years never to speculate on the impact one event may have on something else. So I can't tell you.
You are entitled to your own opinion. I don't believe anything he says. I don't trust him. I don't believe him. Don't trust him. Don't believe him. And I believe we absolutely were aware. And so there's two sides to this. You might be saying, well, we needed to kill the leader of Hamas. We needed to kill the leader of Hezbollah. Okay, well, what does that solve, really? Because there's just going to be somebody that steps up in the wings. Look what happened when we killed Saddam Hussein. Do you guys remember that? Weapons of mass destruction. We go in, we kill Saddam Hussein, or he gets killed, obviously. Loses his life. Well, then what happens over in Iraq? All hell breaks loose, right? Because as bad as Saddam was to some people, Saddam actually kept the peace because it would have been a whole lot worse without him. And we soon found out that's exactly what happened. It was a lot worse without him. Sometimes the devil you see isn't always the devil you have to worry about. And that's the case here. And the Middle East is it's so complex. And then when you really study it, then you kind of see the differences. Think about this. And I'm not saying any of these groups are good, because none of them are. No one who kills innocent women and children, who attacks other countries, none of them are good. I understand the back channels that they're protecting their own people, and they're doing this because they've been oppressed. I understand the folks over in Gaza who are controlled, by Israel. They don't their water is turned off. They have no water sometimes. If they do something wrong, their water is turned off. It's true. If they do something wrong, their power is turned off. Also true. And because of that oppression is how a group like Hamas grew. I'm not saying that Israel's in the wrong or that the Palestinians are in the wrong. That's not for me to judge. I don't know everything. But I do know that any oppressed group of people, they are going to rise up, they are going to form a group, and those groups can be called terrorists. And here in our country, again, Oath Keepers. What happened on January 6th? They blamed so much of the participation in January 6th on the Oath Keepers. And now the Oath Keepers, Terrence, I'm not sure if I can remember Terrence's last name right now, in prison. In prison. The leaders of the Oath Keepers right now are in prison. They've been designated a terror group. Why? Because we, as conservatives, as Republican voters, were oppressed. And guess what happened? We had folks that reached out and represented us. Those folks are all now political prisoners. We're going to get into that too, because Trump absolutely has called them political prisoners. So think about this. Hezbollah and Hamas, they are the enemy of the Sunni. So they are Shiite, they are the enemy of the Sunni. So ISIS, Al Qaeda, Army of Islam, all of these folks who are Sunni groups are the enemies of Hezbollah, Hamas, and some other groups. They are enemies. They hate each other. Sunni, Shiite do not get along. And so that has a lot to do with what happens in the Middle East. Who gets along, who doesn't get along. Something we can definitely get into more, but we have to absolutely watch what's going on right now over in the Middle East. There's so much happening, and it's escalating very quickly. It's not the first time that what's happening in the Middle East has escalated quickly. I can't tell you how many times I've come on a show and said, gosh, we really got to watch what's going on over there because it's escalating. They're warning and threatening each other. But this one, we need to see what's happening in the coming days, because Iran, they've always said, their doctrine has always been that we do not strike first. We only retaliate. And you can say, oh, they have all their proxy armies. So do we. So does every country. Everybody has proxies. Our proxies are over in Ukraine fighting Russia right now. We all have proxies. And Iran is no exception to that. I'm not defending Iran. I'm just explaining why we should be fearful of Iran. What Iran has always said, always, we will strike you. We will defend ourselves if we must. Now, it's very unusual for anyone to fire, to take this type of shot in Tehran. And I know they're very upset. And Iran has threatened that they will retaliate. Now, when they retaliate, who are they going to retaliate against? Yes, Israel, most definitely. Maybe the United States, right? Because I think even though Anthony Blinken is backpedaling, we all know we're involved. So are they going to strike out against us? And if they do, how are they going to do it? Maybe they'll back down. I know that China, some other countries, part of BRICS, a lot of the members of BRICS are trying to get Iran to back down. And we have to remember, if we fight Iran, if we get into a fight with Iran, we are also fighting Russia and China and all of the BRICS countries. It will be one of the biggest wars that has ever taken place. And I know you're going to tell me I'm wrong. I would not be surprised if we don't at some point face war right here in our own country, right here in our own land. And yes, we certainly have ways of protecting ourselves. We're not ready for a war. We are absolutely not ready for a war. I just read a report last week, that evaluation was done and we're not ready to go to war. You have to have such a stockpile of fuel, which we don't have. You have to have your military assets in place, which we don't have. We are not ready. Because why? Because our military, I love our military and I support them fully. Their hands are tied behind their back. Our military is not ready because guess what happened under Obama? Guess what happened under Biden? They take away defense spending. They take away all of our resources. They send them to other countries. They take our military budget and spend it on other countries on to aid who? Ukraine? I mean, it it really bothers me. But we'll talk about it more as we move along. We'll see what happens. But Iran has not invaded another country since the Ottoman Empire. They have not. Like them or not, they've not invaded anyone. Their proxies have done some things, so have ours. Again, not defending them. I just want to make sure people know the truth, and we have to keep an eye on what is going on. Jay says we have a percentage of our population who would welcome an invading force. If it were BRICS, I don't know. People say I wouldn't want to live under Russia; they're communists. I wouldn't want to live under China; they're communists. What do you think you're living under now? I just had 2 of my shows deleted on Facebook, and I'm sure I'll have another one. You know, we're already living in crazy times. I just watched a video yesterday about Putin, who was talking about the Olympics and the parody of the Last Supper and that type of thing. And I'm only allowed so many videos a day, so I didn't save it to play it today. In that video, he said, Russia, we're very traditional here. We do not oppress the LGBT community. We don't oppress them. If you're an adult, you can do anything you want to do in the country of Russia. You are free and open to practice your sexuality any way you want, as long as you don't involve children. As long as you don't involve children. He said, we are a very traditional country and we believe in traditional family values. And I think that Russia is more like what United States used to be before progressivism took over. I'm not saying I would welcome any type of war in our country. I don't. Just as I would live in Russia in a heartbeat. I think that maybe things might be better right now in Russia than they are here, especially under a Harris regime. I don't know what's going to happen. We've got so much going on in our country. It's insane. And there's no doubt in my mind under Harris, they're probably going to take away our guns. And I'm going to get into that too, because that's what they want ultimately, isn't it? They just have to have somebody so far to the left to actually hit that button and make that move. Trafficking. We're going to keep an eye on what's going on in the Middle East. There's no question about it. It's going to be a developing story. Definitely keep an eye on it. If I hear anything, I will be posting it on my page. I will definitely be updating tomorrow, hoping that Iran steps back. I don't think anybody believes Blinken that we weren't involved. So we'll see. We'll see what happens in time. Outside of that, I want to talk about this report. So the DOJ released an FBI report on trafficking here in the United States. And some of you probably heard that there was a sting operation surrounding Comic-Con that just took place. And they made 14 arrests of traffickers. 14, and it was actually a fairly low number considering other big events like Super Bowl and probably the Olympics, but are not probably looking into that over in France. But this report, I wouldn't say it's exactly surprising what we hear, but I think it's facts that we need to know, especially if you have children, we all need to be aware of what's going on in our country. So the DOJ released this FBI report. Now, I'm going to give you just some general statistics here. From 2013 through 2022, 79.8% of those trafficked were females, 14% were male, 6.2% unknown. The reports didn't state whether they were male or female. The vast majority were between the ages of 13 and 16. 13 and 16. 58% were white and 24.9% were black. The others were undisclosed other races. I don't think there's anything that would surprise any of us about those numbers, but think about this, 13 through 16. Those are probably the ages where girls are most susceptible. Why? Because they're online, right? we see so many of these predators online. Patty says 11 women in Naples, Florida have been arrested at a massage parlor all the time. And I want to point out too, because something that people have told me in the past when I've talked about trafficking, they say, well, the majority of trafficked victims are here indentured servitude. This report says that is absolutely not true. In fact, I didn't write this number down, but I believe only 300 and something were indentured servitude, which means that they come over, and that's what happens a lot of times in these massage parlors. It's an indentured servitude. They have these women come over from Asia. Most of the time it's from Asia, and they take their passports and all of their documentation, and they force them, and it is, still sex trafficking. They force them to work in these massage parlors and will not allow them to ever leave. They will not ever give them their passport back. Some of the people who are trafficked come here and they're made to work as maids or service people. It's not sexual, it's service and that type of thing. But the majority, according to this report, the majority of the people who end up in trafficking situations were lured online. Online. So that means that, and we've all seen these circumstances play out. You have, let's say, your son or daughter, and they're online and they're receiving these messages from someone who they think is a child their own age. And of course, we know when they do these researches that researchers, when they research it, if I can get that out right, we find out, of course, it's an adult, taking advantage of a young girl. And Jay says, I saw Chris Hansen report that 3 of the 5 who showed up for exploiting a minor were illegal immigrants recently. Yeah, absolutely true. Absolutely true. That has been happening a lot. Robert says Eastern Europe and Russian as well. Yes, absolutely so. And if you go many years ago when I was looking into investigating some of these things myself, I went to a strip club and I talked to some of the girls. And sex trafficking in your local strip clubs is happening. I talked to a young girl there who said that there was a guy that brought her over. She was Eastern European. A man brought her over, and in the same situation, he took her documents. He brought her over. She thought she was going to have a relationship with him, and she was very young, very young. And this happened. This was right here in St. Louis, by the way, right in the Metro East. And this girl told me that this guy brought her over. And as soon as she came over, he got her a job working at the strip club. And she has to bring, the money goes to him. He holds all of her documentation. And, I'm not one to preach about going to strip clubs or massage parlors. You can do whatever you want to do. But just know that a lot of times when you're going to these places, you are absolutely supporting trafficking of these young women and sometimes men, because you may not realize that. You might think it's harmless fun, but most of the time that's not the case. A lot of these people absolutely are trafficked. Sherry says Sage is the pit of trafficking. It is. I hate to say that, but it is. So a lot of these women are not there. They're voluntarily. They're just trying to make some money. Good for them. Whatever. Equal opportunity. I don't care. But a lot of these women are trafficked. So always be careful what you're doing, and watch your children. The people who most often fall victim to trafficking is going to be children who don't always have the attention of their parents. Sometimes that have parents who are alcoholics or drug addicts, and they think that their parent wouldn't know that they're gone or not gone. They end up, instead of having a good family life, they end up becoming friends with the wrong people. They end up friends with adults who will take advantage of them. These people lure them into taking drugs, doing things they shouldn't do, sometimes taking photos of them and blackmailing them. They lure these girls and sometimes boys into trafficking. You know, 9 times out of 10, a victim goes willingly. Willingly. We always hear these reports, oh, so and so was kidnapped, a van pulled up and grabbed this little girl. Most of the time, those are not trafficking incidents. Traffickers, their victims are so prolific. They don't have to kidnap anyone. The last thing a trafficker wants is some kid who's being splashed across the media that they're missing. Most of these kids who get trafficked are considered runaways. They are not considered kidnapped. You're not seeing them on the news. They're typically called runaways. When you see those reports of a child that has been kidnapped, thrown in a van, definitely not an adult, but even children, those are typically not trafficking victims. Those are typically victims of pedophiles who within the first hour, it's sad to even say this, I hate even saying it, but it's the reality. Within the first hour, those children and those women are typically murdered. And you can look it up, that's a fact. But trafficking, it's a whole different ball game here. These people are coming in and taking advantage of your children right under your eyes, right under your nose. So keep an eye on it. These statistics are very real. And I can guarantee you, I don't care where you live, what community you're in, trafficking is definitely taking place in your community. It is absolutely happening. You have to keep your eyes open. Do we open our children up to trafficking? I know I'm old. Some of you might be old like I am, and we all watched cartoons back in the day. Flintstones is one perfect example. Where now that we're adults, we can go back and look at these clips that people have made and of these different shows, and we see all the sexual innuendos that we didn't even see as a kid, had no idea. And I saw a clip, and I'm going to play that for you, where this guy, you're going to have to judge it for yourself because I don't have the answers. But he's pointing out that the Nickelodeon logo is exactly the same shape as Epstein Island. You're going to have to judge this one for yourself because I can't do it for you. I'm not even sure myself what to think. But when I saw this, knowing what I know, I really started thinking, is there more to this? Because there might be. I'm going to play that again because it's short. Does that mean anything to you? I can't judge this for you. I don't know what to think about it myself. Was Nickelodeon, was their logo formed because it looks like Epstein Island? I don't know. Is it one of those situations where it looks like it is and therefore we think it is? It's just, is it on our mind? Is it our imagination? I don't know. I really don't know. Sherry and Peter both say Adrenochrome, Disney, Nickelodeon, all connected. Sherry says, go back and watch Pinocchio. Paula says, I've heard that about Nickelodeon. I've not heard it. This is the first I've ever heard about Nickelodeon. And Peter says, oh, breaking news, Hunter Biden's, let me go back and read that, that they paid for research with Ukraine lab on bird flu research, funded by Fauci and the Pentagon. Not surprised. Sherry says symbolism will be their downfall. Jay says, I think people are looking for the boogeyman and seeing it in places it doesn't exist. And that could be the case, Jay. And that's why I want to leave that up to your own imagination because I'm really 50-50 on it. Sometimes I think that people will go out of their way to see something that's not there. And that's like the adrenochrome thing. I don't know what to think about that. I've looked into it. Is it true? I don't know. I mean, it seems true. And I've been hearing more about it lately, more about people talking about the plasma. I don't know if you guys have heard this story, and I don't have the video for you today. I'll find it and show it another day. But there were some people who it was a grandfather who had dementia. And he was in a pretty bad state of dementia. And so his son asked the grandson if he might consider donating plasma to the grandfather. And so the son ended up donating plasma to his father. And I think that son ended up donating plasma to the grandfathers. I think how it went. But what ended up happening is when they donated the plasma of the son to the father, it didn't make any changes at all. There was nothing that could be seen. But when they donated the plasma to the grandfather that had the dementia, everything about him changed. His appearance changed. He looked younger. His dementia, they claim, went away. Is it possible that we really do have folks out there using the plasma of children to become healthier? Or is it the blood? Is there something more to it? I don't know. I don't know. Maybe that's something we'll delve into on some different shows. Sherry says she saw that video. It was good medical research. If that's happening, if it's torturing children, as Sherry says, then no, that's not okay. My brain is kind of out on that one. It's so hard for me to believe that anyone is using the blood of children, of babies, sacrificing children for their own good. But nothing that happens anymore surprises me. Absolutely not a darn thing. And I think that our children are so susceptible to this type of programming. And had we known when we were kids that all of the stuff that was going on that we all saw that we didn't even know about is pretty surprising. And it's no wonder. We have to watch what our children are watching. We have to see what they're doing. And I am 100% a proponent of taking your child's phone away and looking at it, know their passwords. To me, if they're my cutoff would be 17 years old. If they're under, and you're going to say that's too extreme, and I'm going to tell you I have a child that does not drink, does not do drugs, and has never been trafficked. Because why? Because I kept an eye on what he did. And I know it doesn't always matter, but it starts there. And I'll tell you what, if they are under 17 years old, you should absolutely know all of their passwords. You should know the code to their phone. You should know who they're talking to. You should know where they are at. I kid you not, when my son was 16 years old, if he wasn't home by his curfew, I got in my car and I drove and I found him and I looked for him and I brought his little butt back home because I did not want him drinking. I didn't want him to get involved in drugs. And I know even the strictest of parents, sometimes your kids just do what kids do, and it's not always your fault. But we have to do our best to make sure we know what our kids are doing. We have to see who they're talking to, who they're associating with, what's going on. And I know for a fact that there are people who listen to my show, whether they're on here now or not, or later, they know. They learned the hard way. I have friends who've had children who've really been involved and taken advantage of in some very serious ways. And even parents who have done their best to protect their children. That's why you have to look. Jay says, Life 360 app shows where the phone is. Jay, here's what's interesting about Life 360. I know how to hack Life 360. And I can guarantee you, if I know how to hack it, so does someone else. And I'm not going to show you how. But there is a way, if you use Life 360 app, where you can do a couple of different little things and it will look like you are in one place when you are really completely somewhere different. I have learned how to hack it, and if I can do it, other people can do it. I don't know how you keep track on your children. Maybe an air tag, first kids can leave one somewhere. Something we need to talk a little bit more about. But keep an eye on your children. See what they're watching, see what they're doing. Keep an eye, know who their friends are. That's the best thing I can tell you. And Jay says everything is hackable. It sure is. It even lets the kids see mine. And it's good for kids to be able to check on parents as well. I believe in both. So moving on, we're going to talk more about that in the coming days. I have a friend who I hope is going to join us, and her daughter, unfortunately, ended up getting mixed up in the wrong crowd. And I know this has happened to so many different people, and she's a good parent, and her daughter ended up getting addicted to drugs, fentanyl, I believe, and committed suicide. And that's something we're unalived. I better be careful. I'll be banned again. Unalived herself. And it's so awful. It's heartbreaking. It makes me sick. Her and I have talked about it. It probably won't be during this show, but we're going to do a separate talk as this show evolves. I'm going to be doing some separate separate podcasts, short podcasts, different interviews, different things, talking about some different subjects. Hello, Phyllis, first time watching. Thank you for joining us. So that's something to think about. It's so hard. It's hard to even talk about. It really is. I had a brother that passed away from alcoholism. I had another one that had a problem with heroin, and I've lost two brothers. It's really hard. I know firsthand it's really hard, very difficult to talk about. So, but it's also the reason why I want to talk about it. Why I'm going to have some separate podcasts about exactly that. It is hard to talk about, and it's unfortunate that more people don't talk about it. So that is something we are going to talk about. Moving on, there's so much going on between Trump and Harris. I see these campaign ads volleying back and forth, But something I want to show you, and I wish I could open every single show with this statement. I wish I could, and because it is so true. Listen to this.
Never forget our enemies want to take away my freedom because I will never let them take away your freedom, which is true. They want to silence me because I will never let them silence you. And in the end, they are not after me, they're after you. I just happen to be standing in their way, and I will continue to stand in their way.
Always one of my favorite Trump sentiments, isn't it? And he is absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. Brenda says, my oldest son died from a heroin overdose. I'm really sorry about that, Brenda. It's so hard to lose a child. I can't even imagine. And if you ever want to talk about it, I'd be happy to have a segment with you and we can discuss that, because I think by us talking about painful subjects, hopefully it saves lives. So Trump, he has been all over the campaign trails, as has Harris. Have you guys seen the Harris rallies? Do you remember a couple weeks ago, or I keep saying a couple weeks ago, I haven't even been here a couple weeks. One of my first episodes, I showed a campaign rally of Harris, and if you scanned around the crowd, it was mostly all white, middle-aged to elderly women. You could see maybe a couple of persons of color in the crowd, couple of men, mostly older white women. And now all of a sudden you see Harris with these huge crowds, almost all persons of color. Are these legitimate Harris supporters, or are they plants? Are they people they paid? I showed some videos on Tuesday where we talked about people being paid to support Harris, people being paid to join her social media pages, people being paid to attend the rallies, etc. Are these legitimate folks who support Harris when you see these campaigns, or again, are they plants? We saw what Biden's campaigns look like. I mean, at one point, remember they would draw circles out in the field, and there'd be maybe 6 people there, one in each circle. There were no people lining the street. I'll never forget one time I saw Biden arriving in town. I believe it was in the Hamptons, and he's driving in and, waving at people, and these people are looking around like, who is this? And then they kind of like half waved. There weren't thousands of people lining the streets. There weren't hundreds of people. There weren't even dozens of people lining these streets. These just happened to be people walking past. It was pretty darn funny. Now, Harris, on the other hand, they're saying thousands of people are lining up at her rallies. I don't buy it, but it could be true. We could have enough folks in our country that are progressive and communist and are going to support her. Paula says, but yet Biden got 81 million votes. 81 million votes. Yeah. We'll all believe that, won't we? Plants, I believe. Yes, Paula, I think so too. And identity politics plays everything, doesn't it? It plays into everything, because we know Harris is going after the Black votes, the minority votes. She's going after the illegal votes, because we know the illegal folks are definitely going to be voting. No question about it. It's already happening. We talked about this on Tuesday. 113 votes just in Washington, D.C. for the primary of illegals. It's definitely going to happen. We got to watch out for propaganda. What's propaganda? What's not propaganda? And of course, the biggest news story right now is they're going after Trump for talking about Harris's nationality, her race. What is her race? And Judge Brown, I've got a video to play for him. He kind of lays it out there, and he is a black man. He lays it out there how he feels. And again, judge for yourself whatever you think. Is she Hindu American? Is she a black American? What exactly, where do you see her falling in line? And let's see here. I better have that video. My videos have not been saving very well. I know I downloaded it, but where it is another story. Okay, bear with me for a moment, and I will see if I can bring it up. Because I know I have it. I saved it. It's here somewhere. Well, I don't see it. Let's see. All right. Sorry about that, guys. I know you guys have been bearing with me. I had it. I don't know why it's not here. Who knows? But either way, I will try to find that here in a few moments. But I'm going to play you another video in the meantime while I search for that, because it is here. I am first going to play you Trump's new campaign ad while I search for that video. And then we're going to listen to someone from the Black community talking about Harris and whether her opinion is what most of the folks in the Black community feel. I don't know. Are they really coming out to her rally genuinely, or are they really against her? But I think her opinion is very important. I'll play that right after I play the Trump rally here, or the Trump campaign ad. All right, now I'm going to have all kinds of problems going on.
Million illegally here.
Let's start that over. What in the world? Sorry. Why?
Migrant crimes. And ISIS now here. This is America's border czar, and she's failed us. Under Harris, over 10 million illegally here. 250,000 Americans dead from fentanyl. Brutal.
I'm Donald J. Trump, and I approve this message.
This is America's border czar, and she's failed us. Under Harris, over 10 million illegally here. 250,000 Americans dead from fentanyl. Brutal migrant crimes. And ISIS now here.
Do you have any plans to visit the border? You haven't been to the border.
And I haven't been to Europe. I mean, I don't understand the point that you're making.
Kamala Harris, failed, weak, dangerously liberal.
I be hearing all y'all talk about how this world is just really literally just kicking y'all in the ass. And child, I know. Y'all gotta realize something. This Democratic Party, they run the media. They run these jobs, these corporations. They the reason why this economy is in piss poor shape. See, the Republican Party, this was built on the republic for which it stands, because that's what benefits us the most. Because being a republic person or Republican is about freelance. It's about being able to be self-sufficient. When you self-sufficient, you don't need any handouts from the government. But see, the Democrats want you to need them and rely on them and get handouts from them. But the thing about it is, they make it so hard for you to receive them handouts that you deserve, that you put into, that it becomes obsolete anyway. It's all a scheme and a scam. I want y'all to really realize that that whole party need to evaporate in thin goddamn air. They need to, I dream of Genie them motherfuckers up.
Sorry about that. As usual, always having some kind of technical issue. So I do apologize for that. I was trying to pull up the Joe Brown video in the background and, of course, ended up deleting something else. So I am going to find that video for you guys because it is, I think, important, and we will figure it out. However, in the meantime, I guess we want to talk about some polling numbers, because I don't know if I believe the polls. I don't know if I believe the polls. There's so much going on, And I'm going to go back and look at this here and get these polling numbers from you because it is crazy to me. What they are trying to tell us is never what it actually is. That's all I can say. It's never what it actually is. They want us to believe that Harris is winning in the polls or at least gaining on Trump in the polls. I absolutely do not believe it. I will never believe that she could potentially get ahead in the polls. I don't know what you think. I don't believe it. And according to, now this is according to, if you look at X, it says at P polling numbers. This is allegedly a general election poll. I don't believe this to be true, but this is one of the main polls that both campaigns follow. They're claiming that Harris has the lead in 4 of the swing states. They say she has the lead in Arizona, Michigan, Nevada, and Wisconsin. Trump has the lead in Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and they have a tie in Georgia. I don't think I believe that. And now, according to Harvard, I don't believe anything Harvard says either, but according to a Harvard poll, it shows that Trump is just barely leading Harris by 3 points. 3 points, down from 7 points, which was over Joe Biden. So they are claiming in this Harvard poll that Trump is 48%, Harris 45%, undecided 7%. I don't believe that. Do you believe that? I don't believe that. Stacey says, I don't believe those polls. I don't believe in any polls. And let's see here. I don't get it. It's more propaganda, isn't it? Isn't it just propaganda? Because what happens in this country? What happens in every country? People are always typically going to side with the mass, right? They're going to side with the mass. And when you side with the mass, then you're going to vote for whoever they want you to vote for. That's typically the way things are going to work. And when they tell you that the majority of people are voting for Harris, those folks on the undecided side, the people who don't care about politics, they're going to say, okay, well, if all of these people who are like me are voting for Harris, and I'm going to vote for Harris too. And that's how sometimes Democrats win because they own our media, they own our news, and then they can post anything they want, anything they want. Stacey says they want to discourage us, so we'll give up. Absolutely so. It is another false narrative. Linda says baloney is what I say about the polls. Nice way of saying it. It is absolute BS. You are absolutely correct. I don't believe any polls, but it's important to talk about them because even though we are the small percentage of people who don't believe the polls, we know what they're trying to pull over on us. So many people don't get it. So many people have no idea. They absolutely do not know. And it is a mass propaganda campaign. They'll come out again. It's just to sway those folks who are undecided. I know I've done it. I'm sure you guys have done it too. And you go and let's say you're going to vote and you've paid attention to a couple of the elections that are very important to you. And then there's a couple you're like, no, I haven't paid attention to those people. And you go and you do your research online and you ask your friends, well, who are you voting for? Because I haven't really researched these couple of races because it doesn't really involve me that much. And then they say, well, I'm voting for this person or this person, or you might look it up online, you see who the majority of people are voting for, and then you vote for that person, not knowing anything about them. And that's what happens here. These people, they're looking up, well, who should I vote for? And they're going to vote for whoever the news tells you to vote for. If you're watching MSNBC, NBC, ABC, obviously any of those stations are all going to tell you to vote for Harris. There's no question about it. We cannot escape it. So that's going to happen. I showed you guys Trump's new campaign ad. I have a couple other videos here to play. I don't know if I'll ever find the Harris, the Judge Brown video. I guess I'll have to play it tomorrow if I don't see it because I don't know what happened to it. So I apologize for that. I had it, but it's kind of weird how in the 8 o'clock hour, weird things happen. Have you noticed that? On my show, every single episode in the second hour, weird things start happening. Videos disappear. Can't get photos to pull up. Oh, my show, sound in and out, slow connections. It's really strange. And I'm not trying to be conspiracy about it. It could just be my ineptitude at producing my own podcast. But it's kind of strange how things go good in the first hour and it kind of goes downhill from there. So here's one more video I want to play for you about Harris.
Ma'am, the U.S. is experiencing record inflation, the worst in 30 years, way beyond expectations. OPEC didn't increase oil production. Can you tell us a little bit about how you would prevent the new spending in your Build Back Better agenda from exacerbating the problem? And also, what else are you going to do to fix this problem with inflation?
All right, thank you. Well, let's start with this. Prices have gone up, and families and individuals are dealing with the realities of that bread costs more, that gas costs more. And we have to understand what that means. That's about the cost of living going up. That's about having to stress and stretch limited resources. That's about a source of stress for families that is not only economic, but is on a daily level, something that is a heavy weight to carry. So it is something that we take very seriously. But there is also a point that is important to make on the Build Back Better framework. One, it is designed to make it less expensive for working people to live. It was specifically designed to bring down the costs of childcare and increase accessibility and availability. Designed to bring down the cost of elder care. And make it available to all those working families that need that support and need that help. And Build Back Better is not going to cost anything. We're paying for it.
Say what? Right? Say what? What in the world is she talking about? Have you seen the video? I'm not going to play it of her saying Bidenomics. What in the world is she talking about? What is she talking about? There is nothing. We're not in a better place right now. Our dollar, our U.S. dollar has gone down by what, 40%, maybe more at this point. We're paying more for literally everything, more for gas, more for food, more for healthcare appointments. I'm going to get into healthcare here in a couple of moments. We're paying so much more for everything. I don't know what in the world she's talking about. I don't think she knows what she's talking about. And that's what really worries me. She has no idea what in the world she's talking about. But I know what she's talking about, and you do. And what I see happening with a Harris win, what I see happening is they're going to come after us with everything they have. Everything they have. She is so far left of Sanders, so far left of any person we've ever had run for office. And the first thing they're going to do is they're going to come after your guns. No doubt in my mind. That's going to be the first thing they do. They absolutely want us to be unarmed. They don't care that the criminals overpower us or overpower our police departments. That is going to be the number one thing they do. How we prepare for that, I'm not even going to get into that on this show because I will for sure get banned. Prepare yourself because it's going to happen. Paula says, I heard Chuck Schumer actually say the Biden-Harris admin has done incredible things. Of course he's going to say that because Schumer is a total idiot. He is a complete idiot, but aren't they all? Because what is Congress doing? What I'd like to ask you, are there any members of the Republican Congress who are coming out and telling you the truth? Is anyone telling you the truth? Because I don't see anyone. Aren't they supposed to be the people who represent us? Why aren't the folks who represent us coming out and talking about the truth? Why aren't they telling you what this really means? I don't get it, but it's not happening. John says, Harris just gave the longest, most idiotic non-answer I've heard, but all of her speeches are that way, aren't they? All of them. She never gives an answer. She's blah, 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 and keeps repeating herself and saying the same darn things, and none of it in the end means anything. Pam says, who will volunteer to pass along their GUNZ? Good idea. Spell it better than say it. I can guarantee you that the majority of Americans are not going to give up a darn thing. And so then where does that leave us? They're saying you have to give it up. You say you're not. I think we all know where the middle ground is there. What else are they going to do to us? We already know Harris wants free Medicare for all, take away private health care, free Medicare for everyone, free college for community college for everyone. But free is not free, is it? Free is not free. Right now, you're paying every single dollar on your paycheck, 73 cents of that dollar is going towards taxes, right? Pretty soon they're going to take all of your dollar. You might have 2 cents left to try to survive on. All of your money is going to go to taxes. You're going to pay for community college. You're paying for everyone's Medicare. That's what you're doing. Stacy says payment for housing is going to go down because you'll be renting and not owning. And we're going to be talking about that next. Food will be less because they're going to be rationing food and you'll be in a food line. You won't be able to pay your car payment, so you'll have to use some sort of public transportation. Healthcare is outrageous, and you'll pretty much have assistance for everything. They're already working on that, Stacy. You are so right. They are already working on that because guess what? We think it's bad now, home ownership. You think it's bad now? Wait until you see what happens under a Harris regime. Where are we talking about corporate housing? I know I love my videos. I've got another video to play for you talking about corporate housing. This is a guy in Tennessee who's talking about these corporate 60 corporate houses being built in his neighborhood. Now, this guy's in Tennessee. I'm over here in Illinois, in the rural part of Illinois. You guys, a lot of you are all over the country. A lot of people in the St. Louis area. I can promise you it's happening in St. Louis. I can promise you it is. It is happening big time in St. Louis County. These corporations are buying houses in record numbers. They're paying 20% over the cost to make sure they get that house. They're putting it out on the rental market. They're making more money. They'll let that house sit on the rental market for 6 months because they're making such a fortune. They're making more money on application fees than they could ever make for monthly rent. But eventually they have to put it out there for rent. They want you to own nothing and be darn happy about it because you know what? You will not have a choice. You will not have a choice. You will own nothing and you will be happy about it. Because if you don't, as Joe Biden said, he's got hellfire missiles to back him up. That is a direct quote, by the way. So this guy here in Tennessee, he's pretty concerned with what he's seeing, as he should be. We should all be concerned over what we're seeing. Corporate housing, it is a thing. All right, now why can't we hear him?
But the real issue that people should have, there's a lot of outrage here in Tennessee because a lot of Californians have moved here. Now, I moved here in January, but I'm originally from New England, which is a market that I also cannot afford to move back to. But the real issue that people should have in our country is not the random person finding their first home they can buy. The real issue is this right here. The corporate-owned housing communities. There are 60 homes going up right there. They're all going to be owned by a corporation, and they're only going to be leased out to people. And those 60 homes are going to turn into 60,000. And I just find it so crazy that we're letting this happen. Owning a home should not be a giant investment for shareholders. It should be something we all have a right to do. And they're changing the American dream and making it so the American dream is not home ownership, but it's renting. And I think that's wrong. And I think that's a much bigger problem.
That is actually called communism. You know what communism is. We talk about it a lot on this show, and we'll be talking about it a whole lot more because guess what? I have friends who lived in communism. You guys remember, again, I referred to her before, Kasia Staki, who joined us back on Cancel This. Hopefully, Kasia, she's actually over in Poland right now. Unfortunately, sadly, her father passed away. But when she's back, we're going to talk to Kasia. We're going to talk about, again, what it's like to literally live in communism. She lived in Poland when Poland was still living under communism. And what did they do? You never owned your home. You never owned your land. You leased it. You leased it from the government. And that's exactly what's happening here. There are entire neighborhoods across the United States, entire neighborhoods, hundreds of homes in some areas, entire subdivisions who are purchased by these big corporations. And these big corporations own these houses. And once again, they rent them out. They sit them on the rental market for a while. You're filling out your application, not hearing anything back. Thousands of people are filling out these applications. They're making a fortune on your application money. It can be up to $100 or more per person. So, if you have two adults in your home, then guess what? You're filling out an application for both adults, paying an application fee for both adults. If you have a child living with you that's over 18, they also have to be a separate application. So you're paying an application fee for three people. And of course, they're bringing in a lot of money, thousands of dollars a day. I mean, pretty good business idea, right? And and it's all about making money, isn't it? About corporate greed. They want to take away your home, and you know what? You're just going to have to live with it. Paula says 15-minute cities. I've talked about 15-minute cities before. Margie says Chesterfield Mall could be a 15-minute city. It could be. And what's really crazy is the 15-minute cities are such a division of class, aren't they? Because you have your upgraded premium 15-minute city. You have your low class 15-minute city. And these 15-minute cities and the models that we've looked at, they don't allow you to visit the other city. Maybe if you have a family member, you can park a car and somewhere outside of the 15-minute city and walk in and visit somebody if you have the right papers. But, it's really a big separation of class. And I think what's going to end up happening is we're going to have a lot of 15-minute cities for lower class folks, a couple for the upper class, and we're going to see division like we've never seen before. But that's what they want, isn't it? Make all of these people work as the ultimate plan. The worker bees do all the work, they pay for everything, and we just sit on our laurels and do not a whole lot of anything for the highest classes. And when I mean upper class, I don't mean people in your community who you consider to be extremely wealthy. Those are not the people. I'm talking about the people who have, $100 million up to, several billions of dollars. Those are the upper class, not the folks that most of us know in our own community as being wealthy. And, it's subject for another day, and I don't have time to get into it today, but I'll try to talk about it tomorrow. Why are all of these folks moving to Puerto Rico? Have you heard this? Have you met anyone in the military who tells you, gee, all these people, all these big generals and military leaders and elites and celebrities, a lot of them are all purchasing homes in Puerto Rico. Jeff Bezos recently purchased a home in Palm Beach. And all of these people are purchasing these great big multi-million-dollar homes in these different areas, and they're building bunkers underneath. Of course, we have Zuckerberg in Hawaii, a lot of these different people. Why are they building these bunkers? Why all of a sudden do these people feel they need an underground bunker? I would like to know. I mean, there's got to be something to it, right? That's just not something you do every day. I would love to build a bunker. Costs a lot of money to build a bunker. Why are they doing this? What's going on in Puerto Rico? Why do they want to escape the mainland here in the United States for some reason? I would really like to know the answer to that. Something you can research. If you find anything, let me know. I'm doing my research. You know what? We'll talk about it actually tomorrow. We don't have a lot of time left. A couple things I wanted to add in was El Salvador. We know a lot of companies are replacing the US dollar. El Salvador, they want to replace the US dollar with, guess what? Crypto. As a matter of fact, a lot of BRICS companies are wanting to replace the US dollar with crypto. I think that's pretty interesting. I really do. Pam says, geez, Tabitha, I feel like we all need one. I feel like we need a bunker too. I really do. But what do they know that we don't know? I feel like they do know something. What that is, I spent a lot of time trying to figure out what they know that we don't know. Is it going to be an uprising? Is it going to be a catastrophic event? Is there a reason why they feel like they need to hide underground for an extended period of time? Maybe they're planning something to start all over again fresh. Could you imagine? Have you ever seen the movie Zombieland? If you haven't, go out and see Zombieland. It's pretty interesting. Excuse me. I want to talk about something else very quickly, completely changing gears before we end today. One more thing before I do change gears, I want to talk about Trump yesterday made a very interesting statement. And this is also outside of him talking about Harris's race, which I really wish I had that Joe Brown video for you, Judge Joe Brown. I'm going to play that tomorrow. It talks about how she went from being Hindu Indian American to being a Black American, and he claims that her father, of course, her mother is Indian, that her father has absolutely zero Black ethnicity in him, none. He's Irish and a couple of other different things, but not Black. So we're going to talk about that tomorrow. I hate it that we didn't get to talk about it today. Trump made a statement yesterday. Before I switch gears, January 6th, we talk about that a lot, right? Or we're going to be talking about it a lot. He claims and stated that he will pardon all of the folks arrested on January 6th, over January 6th. He will pardon them all. And let's see, there were 1,400 people total charged for their involvement in the January 6th protest, peaceful protests largely in Washington, D.C. There were over 1,000 convictions, over 1,000 convictions. A lot of these from unlawful parading all the way up to seditious conspiracy. Now, he referred to these folks as warriors, unbelievable patriots, political prisoners. Those were his words. And don't you know that has a lot of the Democrats in Congress totally irked. And yeah, Jay, he said also no taxes on Social Security for seniors. And I played a video of that in one of the first couple shows. No increase in retirement age as well, because of course they're trying to bump that up by a couple years. They don't want you to ever retire. If it were up to Democrat leaders, you would never retire. But I thought that was interesting that he wants to pardon the January 6th folks, and I think they do need to be pardoned. There was a couple. If there was a person who actually did harm a police officer, he's not going to pardon those folks. They belong in prison where they're currently at. But the other folks who were peacefully protesting that got caught up in things, who were just walking through the Capitol building, who were taking selfies with police officers, those are political prisoners. Paula says, yet no Palestinian protesters that deface property get anything. I would like to know all of the violent protesting that took place in this country since let's just start it with Michael Brown. Some people want to take it back to Rodney King. Let's start with Michael Brown. Over 50 people were murdered from the Michael Brown time and all of those violent riots through the George Floyd times and past that. $500 billion in damage, over 1,500 businesses burnt down. Were there 1,400 people charged? Were there over 1,000 convictions? I don't think so. Not only were there not, but our own presidential candidate Harris raised money and she got these folks out. So out of jail, she gave them money for their bail. She raised money and got these folks out of jail. And Jay says there's not ever one rioter ever put in prison, not violent rioters. Nope, not on the Democrat side. So it's going to be kind of funny when they all lose their minds over Trump wanting to pardon these folks, when Harris, in fact, actually raised bail money to support folks that attacked our police officers, threw Molotov cocktails at our police officers. Their defense was paid for by Harris. Always keep that in mind. I am going to switch gears because I feel like I have to talk about this. I myself had a doctor appointment last week, and it was the strangest doctor appointment I've ever been to in my entire life. I've been seeing the same primary care doctor for many years. I've been very loyal because I always think, gosh, I have, it's no secret, I've talked about it on other shows, I have atrial fibrillation. I actually have several different heart arrhythmias, which is really odd. And I take warfarin, which is a blood thinner. So when you take warfarin, it's very important that you continue taking it every day. And you can't miss doses, or you could end up with a blood clot or something along with it. And I have a type of paroxysmal atrial fibrillation, which is no big deal, but I don't see it as a big deal. But again, it can't be fixed by an ablation, and I have to take warfarin. So I have to go visit my doctor to get my warfarin prescription filled every so many months, or they don't want to give it to me. I went into this doctor's office. He was down to pretty much no staff. Normally when I'm there, I see the nurse practitioner, so it's kind of surprising to even see him. But what was interesting is that I go in and he sets up a tablet across the table from me, And he said, well, this is my new nurse practitioner. She's in Manila and she's going to be here and we're going to talk to her and she's going to take care of everything. She's going to fill your prescription. She's going to assess, our discussion, and then your appointments from now on are going to be with this nurse practitioner by video in his office. So I come to his office, which is an hour away from me since I moved, and I'm going to sit down at a desk and I'm going to talk to this nurse practitioner in Manila. And she's apparently going to solve all of her problems. And Jay says, I love our nurse practitioner. I know a lot of nurse practitioners. There are some that listen to this show, so don't be offended by what I'm about to say. And there's a lot of really wonderful nurse practitioners, no question about it. But there's also a lot of them who are not so good at all. And I was just reading about a case, Bloomberg reported on this, about a nurse practitioner who was in the emergency room. Nurse practitioners can be found working independently without a doctor. They can be found working in a doctor's office. They can be in the ER. In this particular case, one nurse practitioner was working in the ER. A gentleman came in, saw the nurse practitioner in the emergency room. It turned out he had hyperglycemia. His blood count was around 600. And instead of the nurse practitioner admitting him and giving him IV fluids and other types of medication, she released him to go home. Said, oh, you're fine. It'll work itself out. Well, he died. He had diabetic ketoacidosis and he passed away. It was one of many cases that Bloomberg mentioned that were deaths at the hands of nurse practitioners. And it made me look into it a little further. Now, I know there are some really good nurse practitioners out there. I know there are. But nurse practitioners are taking over. It's kind of interesting when I read this study by Bloomberg. And here's some of the facts. It said, Right now, there are over 300,000 nurse practitioners. 300,000. In 2014, there was one nurse practitioner to every 5 physicians. By 2024, we have one nurse practitioner per every 2.75 physicians. It is the fastest growing profession in the United States. They expect the nurse practitioners, their profession will grow by 45% by 2032. I'm talking about this today because while you may have a fantastic nurse practitioner, you really need to do your research on your nurse practitioner. Find out where they've studied. That will answer everything. Where did they take their class online? Believe it or not, you can become a nurse practitioner online. You don't have to spend 1 minute, not even 1 minute, in a clinical setting, not even one. It's crazy. And I didn't even know this. It just shocks me. So in order to become a nurse practitioner, you do have to have a degree. It's a master's or doctorate in nursing. And then there's a separate license you have to have to be a nurse practitioner. You can complete this coursework in as little as 3 years online. Now, to become a nurse practitioner, you must have 500 clinical hours, and that's less than 5% that a doctor is required. So 500 clinical hours. Now, if you are taking a strictly online class, your 500 clinical hours is also online, and that could be done through messages back and forth between yourself and a physician, or it can be taken online through visual classes that you're taking. You don't actually have to complete those 500 hours in a clinical setting in person. You don't have to do anything in person. That, quite honestly, it terrifies me. There are 600 schools in the United States that offer programs, strictly online programs, to become a nurse practitioner. Not 1 minute do you have to spend in a clinical setting, not 1 minute. They said they very rarely ever deny an application. In fact, one person Bloomberg interviewed, who is a school administrator at one of these companies, one of these schools, they said they have never denied an application. Anyone that applies to the nurse practitioner program is accepted. If you have the money, you put in the hours, and get this, they all graduate. She also didn't have anyone that didn't graduate the program, which even scared me more. So she said, so right now, there are 39,000 nurse practitioners graduated in 2002. A vast majority of these new nurse practitioners graduated from an online school. So there are triple the number of online schools that are, turning out nurse practitioners than there are actual medical schools. And the education they found is not standardized. When Bloomberg did their research, it's not standardized. These schools all had different requirements, different ways of teaching, different lessons to be learned. And I know I'm running out of time, so I'm going to try to get through this. But again, completely online. Some states actually require no physician to oversee what a nurse practitioner does. I want you guys all to think about that. Not because I'm down on nurse practitioners. I've seen some fantastic ones, but I think we have to really look into who we have. And yes, a PA is different than a nurse practitioner, no question about it. And we have to look. There's no harm in asking your doctor's office, where did your nurse practitioner go to school? Do your research. Because I'll tell you what, based on this Bloomberg report, some of these people, man, they are really, really causing some problems. There's a lot of people. As a matter of fact, they did a study as part of this study, and they said that these nurse practitioners, some of the ones particularly online, they're using more resources and have worse outcomes for patients. They're not going to know what everything a doctor would know, and if they're not supervised by a doctor, you really have to worry. Anyway, my time is up. I don't want to be deleted today, so I got to cut it short. But anyway, please look into that. There is no harm in asking your nurse practitioner where they went to school, how many clinical hours. Did they actually go through a training at a hospital? Because many of the nurse practitioners you come across will have taken in-person classes. They will have completed in-person learning at a teaching hospital. Those are the folks you want. If you come across somebody and all their classing, all their clinical hours were done online, I would certainly be a little concerned about that. Anyway, that's it for today. Tomorrow, just a reminder, 3 hours tomorrow, 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. Joe Fresta is going to join us. I'm going to talk to Colonel Joe Adams about when he wants to join us. I've got a lot of other things going on, a lot of other guests. I'll be posting it on my Facebook page. Again, I'm Tabitha Hassell. This is Tabs on Tap. You can watch the show, obviously, live on Facebook as long as they allow us, YouTube as long as they allow us, X and Telegram will always be there. You can check out the shows 24 hours a day. If you like the show, be sure to share it. And thank you again for watching today and being patient with me as I work out my technical issues. And I will look forward to talking to you all tomorrow.